gentlemen, Dr. Brent Ridge and Josh Kilmer-Purcell.
So honored to be here amidst all this amazing talent. It's talent like this that whenever we go out, wherever we're traveling in the world, makes us so proud to talk about Sharon Springs and Schoharie County. So thank you for having us.
So about 8 years ago, we purchased this copy of the Sharon Polka off of eBay. Right here. It didn't cost much, it was certainly under $10, and at the time we thought it would look nice displayed on our piano. And after it arrived in the mail, I clanked it out on the piano a few times, but really the music just sat there on the piano for several years, and then Charlie Peace saw it in the corner of a tiny picture of a magazine article that was published above it, and had photos of our house. So he wrote us and he inquired whether we might loan it to the Schoharie Concert Band, which we did, and then Diane Balthazar composed a full wind band arrangement from just really rather slight piano music. Diane? In the weeks leading up to today, we grew curious about the original composer, so we tried to do a little bit of research, and we didn't find out much about Theodore Clark. There's only 3 compositions to his credit that we could find, and there's a handful of newspaper and census mentions, but with a little imagination and a lot of local historical context, we think we can paint a pretty good picture of him. Now, from census records, we've learned that Theodore C. Clark was born around 1848, most likely around Schoharie. He was a pretty promising young musician, and at the age of only 17, he published his first song, which was General Sheridan's Grand March. It celebrated the Civil War Union general's victory in Virginia. His next published song came just a year later. It's the song we're going to hear today, and just like most 18-year-old boys, Teddy's next subject matter was a little closer to his heart.
Girls. Lucky for him, there was no more hopping place in 1866 to scope out hot girls than good old Sharon Springs. It's true, right down the road from Schoharie. Sharon Springs was in its absolute heyday in the mid-1860s, when Teddy was in his late teens. Over 12 grand spa hotels have been recently built around the Springs, and every summer day was filled with music, parties, and gatherings. In 1864, a guest at the Pavilion Hotel wrote, "This house never commenced a season with a greater number of guests, nor composed a more highly respectable and interesting company. Gentlemen of intelligence, ladies of refinement, young ladies of beauty, young men of aspiring hopes are all present." In the summer of 1866, Teddy probably was one of those young men of aspiring hopes. He may have worked in one of the grand hotels, or he may have just come for evening dances. It's easy to imagine this Schoharie country boy developing summer crushes on one or maybe even more of the refined, sophisticated New York City young women visiting the spas. Like countless young men throughout history, he probably figured he could win over their hearts by penning a song about them. Hence the Sharon Polka, which is dedicated on the very front of the piece to the ladies of Sharon Springs. It was published by J.H. Hidley's, a venerable piano, organ, and music store in the big city of Albany. This was the big time. It must have been pretty exciting, a published musician at 18, and this wasn't a stuffy opera or a symphony, this was parlor music, which, if it had gotten really popular, would have been like hitting the pop charts today. He could have been the 1860s version of Justin Bieber. But it didn't quite pan out. The Sharon Springs polka never caught on in a big way. The ladies of Sharon Springs and the rest of the country did not become crazed Teddy Clark believers. However fun it may be, the Sharon polka, by any measure, was not a major contribution to the music world. After the Sharon Springs polka, we can't find any more recorded facts about Theodore C. Clark. An early 1880s local newspaper mentions that he was playing the organ at the Schoharie Methodist Church. An 1874 jury roll call lists his occupation as lumberman. In 1918, we find record of a World War I novelty patriotic song entitled The Starry Banner, self-published by Mr. Clark of 20 Otsego Street in Schoharie. He would have been 70 years old. The very last mention of Theodore we found is in the 1920 Amsterdam Evening Recorder, which briefly notes that a Theodore C. and Mary Clark were moved to a new home. He is not found in any further census records, so most likely died sometime in the 1920s.
And we could take away a rather depressing lesson from Theodore C. Clark's life. We could feel a little bittersweet about the fleeting fabulousness of our own youth, which is inevitably replaced by the less glamorous realities of making a living and growing old. We all feel some pangs about slipping into the later half of our life, feeling a little bit irrelevant and maybe a little invisible. We all start to wonder what our legacy will be, or even if we'll have one. But we think there's a really uplifting message in what we're all doing here today. I mean, look at us all. Several hundred of us, nearly 150 years after Theodore C. Clark wrote a rather inconsequential teenage parlor ditty, trying to woo the women of Sharon Springs, and we're here today rediscovering it, reliving it, and celebrating it. Maybe the real secret of living forever isn't reserved for those who do great and awesome things. It's not only for those who have books written about them and statues erected on the town square. Today's performance of the Sharon Polka shows that we can all make our mark on the future. The secret to living forever is simply to create something. It can be a song, it can be a recipe, a quilt, a chair, a poem. Just make something. It doesn't have to be great or world-changing, it just has to exist. Because who knows, 150 years from now, someone might spot something you created in the corner of a hologram on their iPhone 7900 and bring it back to life for others to enjoy and learn from. So let's all give a big round of applause to Theodore C. Clark of 20 Otsego Street in Schoharie, New York, who might not have lived happily ever with the Sharon Spring girl of his dreams, but nonetheless lives on here with us today.